Okay, so we begin. It says the Election Review Committee was appointed by the National Executive Committee of the party following the party's defeat in both the 2016 presidential and parliamentary elections to conduct a comprehensive review of the planning, execution, and outcome. My touch screen is gone off. All right, let's come back. All right, it says to conduct a comprehensive review of the planning, execution, and outcome of the party's campaign and participation in the December 2016 elections with a view to establishing what went wrong in order to guide the party's activities moving forward into the future. This is not the first time the party has commissioned such a post-election review exercise. A similar review exercise was undertaken under the chairmanship of Dr. Obeda Samoa in the wake of the party's defeat in the 2000 election. This time round, such a review was arguably particularly critical, given that the scale of the party's defeat compared to the year 2000. In this year's election, the party lost a total of 55 parliamentary seats and won back 11 seats it lost in the 2012, bringing the party's net loss to 44 seats. The recovery of the 11 seats was achieved in spite of the many challenges that the party faced. It is important to look back in the victory as it is to look back in the defeat. Indeed, it is arguable that the party failed to recognize and address negative tendencies and factors that were allegedly evident in 2012. Lulled as it was by its victory and ended up reaping the whirlwind of 2016. Indeed, a number of constituents we interacted with actually chided the committee by suggesting that we, the review committee, would quite probably not have been there to listen to them if we had won. Correct. In what follows, Kwesi Botchway says, we aim on the one hand to present the views we heard from constituents and stakeholders fully and honestly, and on the other hand, to evaluate them as rigorously as we can. We do this by reproducing in the section on views from the regions and from the stakeholders exactly what people said, and then in our own findings and conclusions by leading all subjectivism and self-serving agendas from statements made and views expressed. Additionally, and in what we consider to be perhaps the most significant part of our work, we relate to the general grassroots and stakeholder perceptions of the factors that caused the party's defeat to a sampling of the actual parliamentary and presidential election outcomes, constituency by constituency, in order to establish why. For instance, in order to establish why, for instance, the generally held views about the many pitfalls of the biometric register of members caused us losses in some constituencies but not in others. Okay, he comes to the next section. Systemic factors we identified. Here they are. The first one is the rise of monocracy in the party generally. What does that mean? Maybe it means people are asking for money, or money is being used to buy things. I don't know. But we'll look at, after this, we'll look at the media and communication, and then we'll look at election monitoring for today's serialization. So wait for it. He discusses the media and communication, and he discusses election monitoring. The rise of monocracy, he says, a waning of party ideology and philosophy generally, leading increasingly to ethnocentrism and opportunistic attitudes to settler communities in various constituencies. Wow. The neglect of the party's social democratic focus in policy making. The growing alienation of the party's natural social democratic allies, workers and their unions, farmers, small-scale businessmen and women, traders, teachers, nurses, civil servants, etc. And 5, inadequate recognition of the demographic transition and urbanization trends in our national population. Also, it's interesting, Okay. So here he says that election of party executives. I'll skip that one. Dr. Botchway says here that the election of party executives in 2014, the one that was won by Potofi and Kofi Adams, it was taught across the country in NDC that those elections had been organized. If you know what I mean, had been organized through the power of President Mahama and all of that. So these persons were thought to be unpopular one way or the other, and that division, conversation, argument about whether somebody won in Kumasi or somebody didn't win, it permeated down the whole NDC and divided all of them. That's basically a summary of what he says here about election. But if you want to read it, you can pick it up. When we finish, we'll put it on our page so people can read it. All right. Election of party executives in 2014. So that's the matter that I've just described. And then now let's get to the communication. All right. It says, nowhere were the pitfalls in the party government's communication work more evident than in our meeting with the party government communication strategy team. At the committee's meeting with the team, it was said that non-appointees who communicated on behalf of the party were often without mobility and other resources to help them carry out their work effectively. This, in their view, adversely impacted the relationship that they needed to establish and sustain with the producers and editors of both electronic and print media, thus invariably disabling the party and government from setting the issue's agenda in the media and leaving them little choice but to be reactive in their interventions. This is quite loaded. Dr. Botchway says in their view, the people that came to the radio station, the producers, the people didn't have enough resources to create a relationship with the producers and editors. I don't understand that too much. He's saying that they needed some money so that they will have a good relationship with editors and producers. Editors and producers, we don't charge money. So, but that's in the report. It's there. It's in the document. All right, let's move on. The group accused the managers of the government communications work at the time of being dismissive about welfare issues. The communicators also accused party and government of creating what they described as divisions and class societies among communicators. They complained of being almost routinely underfunded. Better connected communicators were better resourced, but were often so arrogant in their posturing and general attitude that they turned listeners off. The party, in their view, also failed to support the establishment of more pro-NDC media houses and had to rely on unfriendly media. It's interesting. The political conversation connotes unfriendly media and pro-media. That happens with ideology. So if you're a right-wing or center-right like me, then you know that unfriendly media is a left-wing media, which is CNN. Yes, so if that's what he means, then we get it. But in Ghana, we don't quite have that. But he used the same term. He said unfriendly media. Okay. He said the NDC media houses, and they had to rely on unfriendly media. Okay, let's move on. This, Dr. Botchway says, reduced the extent to which NDC messages could be carried on any given day. The committee found, though, that there were many radio stations owned by party members or supporters, but that the problem was the quality of personnel in these stations and their tendency to source news from better established and unfriendly radio stations. I like this point because we've always been telling them that it's an intellectual exercise. That's the point Dr. Botchway is making. That they had radio stations, but the quality of people there, they couldn't write their own stories. So they are relying on stories from Joy FM, unfriendly, and he didn't say Joy FM, he said unfriendly media. They are relying on stories from all because they don't have the quality. So if you set up a radio station as a politician and you just set it up in name and you don't have the quality there, it will not have the influence that you are looking for. You will not be able to spread your message to the people. That's a lesson from Dr. Botchway's Dr. Botchway's report to the NDC, his own party. But okay, let's move on. Once again, the committee's engagement with a section of the press provided a window into the state of the party's relations with the media. The following is a sample of their views. There was disconnect between the media, party, and the government communication machinery. Party spokespersons go and mess up with other stations and come to do the damage control on Radio Gold. NDC disrespected its own media. NDC is intolerant of the media. NDC sponsored pro-MPP media who painted themselves as neutral. NDC had no patience to build a neutral station. A neutral station? Okay. NDC press corps went through inhumane treatment under the party. President Mahama's in-house communications team was squandering resources of the president meant for communication strategy. Ill treatment of the media, no respect for the media. 1. The presidential press corps was told by Standogbe that they were not part of the system and that they were privileged to be party of the presidential press corps. I don't understand that anyway, but let's move on. Quarterly stipend meant for the press corps was not disclosed until August 20th, 2015. Only 4 out of the 34 members of the presidential press corps were given vehicles from a pool of about 200 vehicles available for distribution to the press corps and others. Hey, this one I have to read it again. Dr. Mahama and Standogbe were the president's undoing. Wait. This is of 200 cars. 2015, I was here, I was in the media, I was press, I was here. 200 cars. Oh. Let me read that again. Let me read that again. Okay. Only 4 out of the 34 members of the presidential press corps were given vehicles from a pool of about 200 available for the distribution to the press. Dr. Mahama and Standogbe were the president's undoing. These are the words of Kwesi Botchway, they're not our words. Standogbe smashed a pressman's recorder on one occasion and slapped another. Standogbe edited, in quotes, edited money meant for victims of the accident involving the president's press corps from 50,000 cedis that was supposed to be given to them to 5,000 cedis, and others got 10,000 cedis. President never met his own presidential press corps. The inescapable conclusion from all the evidence assembled by the committee is that the party's efforts at election 2016 election monitoring, and okay, sorry, I should have told you viewers, we are finished with the communication. We are now coming to the election monitoring. So it's here. The inescapable conclusion from all the evidence assembled by the committee is that the party's efforts at election 2016 monitoring and result coalition, to put it simply and bluntly, a complete mess. So I'm building a small case, and we'll be wrapping up around on this story. I'm building a small case. You see, my friend Johnson Asidu Ketia will soon appear in the story. So let's listen. All right. On election day, in the words of a stakeholder who is best placed to judge, caught nuts-footed on that day. Hold on. On election day, where I can't see this very well. All right. Let's move on. I'll catch up with it. We have described in some detail in our findings the confusion that engulfs 2 parallel systems, the party-based system and the Ofosu-Kwesi system, that related each other as rivals instead of complementary centers, each underfunded and configured with shortcuts with predictable risk. So, for instance, the latter system, which is a Ofosu-Kwesi system, which in spite of the protestations of its managers was regarded by the party as the primary system, assumed that a clustering of 29,000 police stations to be covered by 3,000 people as a cost-saving measure for purposes of feeding the center was feasible, although it carried some downside risk. Interesting. Okay. The process of election results collation is hinged on getting the fundamentals right, i.e., having well-trained, competent, and well-motivated polling agents equipped with the requisite logistics phones that, for instance, in the northern region, 250 phones were sent there to cover 11,000 polling stations. This meant that the election results for most places in the region were reported by the polling agents through either physically transporting the pink sheet to the collation center, or they used their own phones to text results to the collation center in the region, which itself was disconnected from the center in Accra. With these arrangements, even if there was no network freeze, the party had no way of obtaining election results in real time, because the reporting infrastructure did not cover every polling station, and affected polling stations could not have been connected to the center. So that's the Kwesi Botchway report on the elections. Now this is 2016 he's reporting about. 2016. So in 2016 he told the NDC that you should look at your election processes. Ahead of 2020 he told them that make sure that you get your election processes right. They came to 2020, didn't they? They did.